Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. We're back. We're doing this again. There's another show, Wednesday, midweek. Time to check in. It's the middle of Republican National Convention week. By the way, as predicted, I don't know if we predicted it here on the show. I know we talked about it. We talked about Trump showing up on the first day of the convention with the oddly shaped bandage on his ear, although... You know, as I said, I don't think there's any, dignified way of bandaging the tip of an ear except for possibly going for the full head bandage thing. Although, now I think they should have wrapped him up like a mummy and he should have walked around with his arms out, vote for me or I'll haunt you, and that might work. But anyway, I think... Well, I don't know whether we discussed it on the show or not. It would be an offhand comment, but I've certainly seen it discussed on social media. People were saying, it's a non-zero chance here that by tomorrow, other Republicans, just delegates on the convention floor, are going to start wearing bandages, gauze pads on their ears. I assume they'll begin by saying in solidarity. Oh, yeah, I think we did, because we talked about the fact that they started wearing their ties too long. It's just one of those things that, dear leaders can get people to do. And sure enough, there were photos circulated of other people with gauze pads stuck to their ears yesterday. So, they're very predictable at the very least. We can give them that. I don't know if that's something they want, and I don't know whether that's anything we need to give them, but it was unusual to say the least. Okay, so whatever, they are doing that. Their convention is, a horror show as usual, and it proceeds onward. I know Greg has got a couple of things collected about that. We have new-ish news, I guess. We're now done. We have a conviction in the Bob Menedez case, and as you know, the president is going to pardon him, and the Supreme Court is going to say everything is A-OK and he can walk free. But he's a Democrat. But he isn't anymore because now he's an independent. So... who knows what's going to happen? Although there is this, Trump, when he had the pardon power, he did think he was going to enjoy, and maybe he did enjoy doing it, but he didn't get the chaos out of it that he wanted to. But he thought it would be chaos producing if he pardoned a Democrat, if he pardoned Rod Blagojevich, and said, so that there was an obviously corrupt Democrat that Democrats had said, no, we actually don't want this guy out and walking around conviction free. He should be convicted. And Trump pardoned him so that he could say to Republicans, look, to Republicans who might care about such a thing or who might like to troll Democrats with such a thing. Look, he pardons all sorts of people, including Democrats, and just the person you didn't want out and roaming free. So, it was a ploy all along. So he doesn't have the pardon pen now, of course, although he might claim it. I mean, why not? I actually am still the president. I can still pardon people. Or I secretly pardoned him before I left office, and now I'm opening the envelope. I don't think he had one ready for Bob Menedez because Bob Menedez, in as much as he was a Democrat, did frequently attack Donald Trump and his policies and him personally. So I doubt very much that there is one hanging out there. But like I said, there are no rules anymore, and so you never know. So we have that to round up. There is news, more. This is the typical news cycle for an attempted presidential assassination. As far as I'm aware, people will continue to want information and facts and, of course, speculation for several hours after an attempt on the life of Donald Trump. And we have that for you. And so the new news that I happen to put away, which does not help explain very much, but does help explain, for instance, the one issue of somebody noting there are a limited number of counter sniper teams that the Secret Service actually has and trains and stands up at any given time. And people who claim to have an understanding of how they are allocated say that it's extraordinarily unusual for there to be one at a candidate's event. Of course, it is also extremely unusual for the candidate to be a former president and already be under Secret Service protection. And I assume they have imagined for a long time that there's an elevated threat to Donald Trump. But now there is additional word that the U.S., in addition to, they're very busy, the intel services, in addition to detecting the existence of a Russian plot to assassinate the arms manufacturer in Germany that was supplying Ukraine, there was also word that the U.S. intelligence services detected, as the New York Times writes it, a potential Iranian plot to kill Trump separate from Saturday's shooting. I think the Iranians might have been caught as much by surprise by that and said, we didn't give the go-ahead yet for this assassination attempt. What are you doing? Oh, it's someone completely different. Well, how original. So that seems interesting, and we might want to comb through that a little bit, but it might help explain, one, the presence of a counter-sniper team, because apparently they did boost security. They took the threat seriously enough that they did boost security in some way on Saturday at the event. But on the other hand, it also raises the question of, well, if you boosted security specifically because you had reason to believe there was a credible threat from Iran of assassinating or attempting to assassinate Donald Trump on Saturday, or at least including Saturday, then it makes the what seems like lackadaisical response to the presence of someone who could fulfill that prophecy on the rooftop outside of the event venue. So I don't really, again, the truth is that the Secret Service are consummate professionals, and even the police the local police who were helping them out, have some training in these things. So I think that, as unbelievable as it seems at the outset, it all is explained by the physics of the situation and the limitations of communication, the limitations of the authorization for use of force as between different law enforcement agencies, I'm sure. But yeah, I guess there's going to be some questions. And then we want to know a little bit more about this idea of an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. Is it fully formed, or is it just what Iranians generally do with their time? Iranian government officials, anyway, certainly have their cause, and it's discussed in the article, but it may just be aspirational. But isn't it aspirational for us all? We all have dreams. Iranian government officials no less than any of us. Greg Dworkin has dreams, but more to the point, he has news stories to share with us. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
More nightmares than dreams lately. But I think that the entire situation can be explained by the fact that Aaron Sorkin, the guy who wrote West Wing, TV show, yes, is writing the script of this entire presidential election. And this was a rush job, and he didn't really tighten up all the ends. And so all these loose ends are probably all going to get brought together in the season-ending finale, which will be in November. Ooh. And we just have to wait till then and see how it all works out, because otherwise none of this makes any sense at all.
It really doesn't. It's very difficult to understand, although I did enjoy finding out the information about, well, okay, he's on the roof, and why didn't they see him? Well, it's a pitched roof. I thought it was a flat roof. When I was envisioning a warehouse-like structure outside of a state fairgrounds or something. Okay, why would that seems like a good place to shoot from. A pitched roof does not, but
it's Pennsylvania. They get snow. Flat roofs, collapse.
Right, but this one hadn't yet. Maybe he was just up there waiting for snow. You never know. Don't shoot him. It's a little early, but yeah. So anyway, as you find out more information, I see. And so there.
Right. There's two aspects of this that people are still going over, like how could this happen? What's the setup and all of that? If you want to get into those details, what can I tell you? You're a process person.
Yeah.
The other is what about the motive?
Yes.
And the answer is, look, we're not going to know.
Yeah. Even if you wrote it down,
it's probably not political.
It might not be
right.
right.
I was disturbed. He was bullied as a teenager. His classmates say he was a jerk. What else do you need to know? He's a troubled kid
Iranian?
With a gun. And he decided maybe he wanted to go suicide by cop. Maybe he just wanted to be better respected by his gun teammates at school who told him he was a really poor shot. Nobody really knows.
Do it,
and nobody's going to know because he's dead.
Yeah. Right. I mean, sometimes they leave behind a manifesto or something.
Not
so far,
case,
no.
So that's why I don't think it was really political. And again, we went over presidential assassination attempts and successes in the AP article on the last show with a reminder that the guy who went after Reagan had nothing to do whatsoever with politics.
Yeah.
A lot to do with Jodie Foster.
Right. And, with a fragmented media environment these days, we're just not going to know what his viewing habits
we're not going to know.
Were.
So just, get used to the fact that the exact details of what went wrong are going to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb. And so we'll know a lot of detail about all the things that people did wrong, but we'll know nothing about the important stuff, which is why would you do this?
Well, we don't want the answer to get
Trump is milking it for everything he possibly can.
Yes.
He had this huge bandage on his ear, which my female friends all looked at and said, why does he have a maxi pad on his ear?
It was rather large.
But it didn't need to be. That was for the camera. What they use are steri strips, which are nearly invisible.
Oh. Yeah,
and they're basically little thin Band-Aids. Or they could, in a minor injury, which is incredibly minor in his case, they could have, basically used liquid skin, some sort of
well, the color would have been off.
Crazy glue. It essentially is what it is. And no, it's clear. So you put it on, and nobody's going to see it, but everybody's wearing those bandages on their ears, like you said, the way they did Band-Aids for Kerry. It looks just as stupid. There is nothing about this convention, and I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. I haven't been watching. I can't stand that stuff. I don't like Nuremberg rallies.
Yeah, I mean, it would be infuriating.
And the thing is that it's addition by subtraction. He picks J.D. Vance because he's overconfident and he thinks he doesn't need the kind of kind of candidate that would help to bring in moderates.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So, he wouldn't even consider Haley because Haley's just so useless. He just wanted to humiliate her, so he had her at the convention talking in his behalf. There's all sorts of different Benji Sarlin had a whole list of all the times she changed her mind over Trump. He's terrible. I'll be his ambassador. He's awful. He's a terrible human being. I'll never vote for him. And there are conservatives who on Twitter have said, look, I know people who she personally told, I will never do this, and then she did this. That's all you need to know about Nikki Haley, which, comes as a surprise to absolutely nobody who's followed her career.
Yeah, and she's not alone. Of course, the most circulated storyline for the first day after the selection of J.D. Vance was same with J.D. Vance. But
somebody published a political cartoon with J.D.
Wow.
Vance on a phone call. And the caption reads, yes, Mr. Trump, I'm so sorry I called you America's Hitler, and I'm so pleased you took it as a compliment.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And that's about sums it up. I mean, J.D. Vance is just a horrible human being. And so it would naturally is a good fit for Trump. That way. But who else does he attract?
Nobody.
Marco Rubio could have gotten the business community. I don't think Marco Rubio would have gotten more Hispanics, more Latinos. That's not his hook.
Yeah,
his hook
he was
is
never
he's Reagan Chamber of Commerce Republican friendly. Same with Doug Burgum.
Yes.
He didn't pick them.
For some reason, he was still in the running.
He assumes, maybe correctly, that he's going to win. He doesn't need them. He's going to go with J.D. Vance and just make MAGA completely MAGA. So all the Reagan Republican and business community Republicans are very uncomfortable with this pick. And what they do about it, I don't know. Private public is different.
Just do it.
But we'll see.
Yeah. Well,
so that's it. That's all I have to say about the convention.
Okay. Yeah. My take on J.D. Vance, I'm going to stick with this for a couple more days until it's totally disproven. But I thought of J.D. Vance as an extremely online pick, essentially. Good for the hyper online MAGA fans. They know who he is, and even casual MAGA fans
didn't want to give up his account, so they had to take J.D. Vance.
Yeah. Pretty much. And so, it's exciting to a small corner of MAGA even. Even the bulk of MAGA probably has no idea who he is.
Right. And also unavailable otherwise was a cat turd, which sounds
right.
odd, but that's the actual name of an account.
Yes.
That has a following on Twitter.
And a large one, and Trump talks to him on social media. So, he's a weird. And in fact, that was the person to whom the victim killed at the shooting on Saturday sent his last tweet. Just that's the kind of person who's in that mix, I guess. That's weird.
Right. Now, this is a human interest story, and I have to admit I was sort of shocked by it. So the victim
yes.
was a devout Republican, another way to describe it.
The weird wording, but yeah, devout.
And his wife got a condolence call from Joe Biden.
It came in. Yeah.
But she refused to take it.
Yeah.
And her explanation was, my husband is a devout Republican. He wouldn't have wanted me to take the call, so I didn't take the call. I have nothing against Joe Biden, she added.
Sure.
I have absolutely nothing against him whatsoever. I'm not political. I'm just doing this because that's what my husband would have wanted.
Nah, it's not political either, but okay.
Right. And then she added, Trump hasn't contacted the family.
Right. Well,
that's the kicker.
Yep. And he's not going to.
He's not going to, but it's just shocking because they have a reasonably competent political arm, at least when it comes to optics.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, well, I shouldn't say he's not going to. It may yet happen. And he may attempt to fly her in for the convention as well.
Yeah, but that's, pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's the sort of thing that an adult says, I need to get on, as soon as I'm clear, I need to get on a call with that family.
Right. But Biden's call wasn't political.
No.
I mean,
that's the obligation of the president.
And it's an appropriate thing to do. It's an appropriate thing to take the call.
Yeah.
You could yell at him if you want. You can do whatever you want.
It was highly political, though she disguised it by saying, well, I'm not political, but I'm going to take this political act. Just, similarly, we're calling for unity. Go kill everybody.
Exactly right. At a time where even Trump is calling for unity, I won't take this call. And the fact that Trump didn't call me,
she knew
but Biden did, is I don't have anything to say about that because I'm not political. But there's no way I'm talking to that guy.
Yeah, because I'm political. And and there was a call from Trump to the family also could be done in non-political fashion. I mean, he can't do it, but the a candidate could have made that call despite not being president and been well within bounds and have felt a moral obligation without making it political, but not Donald Trump.
Anyway, so it's like a little minor footnote to the whole affair.
Yes.
And just to me, it just cements, okay, well, MAGA people are just different.
Yeah, deplorable, some said.
I don't want to speak ill of the living.
I'll take care of that. Thank you very much. But yes, all right.
But I am of the school that, if you have something bad to say about somebody, sit next to me.
Right.
But still, I want to hear it, but I'm not necessarily going to say it. I'll let you say it.
Anyway,
let's talk
deplorable.
scandal today.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
There's a lot to talk about.
What? Where?
I want to remind, because again, this is going to actually wind up as a process thing.
Okay.
So, the first one I'm going to bring up, and these are in living memory things I remember, but only vaguely, and these three kind of blend together in my mind, so it was good for me to look up and separate them.
Okay. One, the Boston Tea Party.
No, not that far.
Oh, okay.
I'm not as old as Biden. So the first one is Abscam.
Ah, yes.
Remember Abscam?
I do.
That's short for Arab scam.
Yeah, which we probably wouldn't use that sort of naming protocol now.
It was.
But yeah.
It was an Arab scam, they said. The American Arab Relations Committee made complaints about the name, so officials revised the source of the contraction, this is from Wikipedia, to Abdul Scam, after the name of its fictitious company. What happened is the FBI set up a sting, and they were looking for members of the public who were trafficking in stolen property and using oil money
and
for corruption. And in the process of doing this,
Yeah.
They wound up videotaping politicians accepting bribes. And the way that happened...
gratuities.
Yeah, goodwill gifts.
Right.
Okay. And so what happened is, in various and sundry ways, the politicians got roped in because one of the crooks, who was later convicted, suggested to the sheiks that were providing the money that, you know what, a good investment would be casinos in New Jersey. But if you do that, you're going to have to be licensed. But that's okay. For a price, we can arrange that. Yes. And that's what sucked in the politicians.
Yeah, okay.
Because now you're talking about licensing, and you have to get immigration officials to agree to let some of the shady characters in who are going to be watching the casinos. And so in the end, it ropes in a lot of local and national figures. This is New Jersey now.
Yeah.
So of the 31 targeted officials, the following members of Congress are convicted of bribery and conspiracy in 1981. U.S. Senator Harrison Williams, Democrat, New Jersey. We're going to get back to him.
Okay.
Because his story is very relevant in regard to what happens with Bob Menedez. U.S. Representative Frank Thompson, Democrat, New Jersey. U.S. Representative John Jenrette, Democrat, South Carolina. U.S. Representative Raymond Lederer, Democrat, Pennsylvania. Michael Myers, Democrat, Pennsylvania. John Murphy, Democrat, New York. And Richard Kelly, Republican, Florida. And then 5 other government officials.
Yes.
So Harrison Williams is indicted on October 30th, 1980.
Okay.
Convicted in 1981. So the thing starts in the late 70s. He's convicted in 1980. And he was given stuff for his help. And one of the things he did is he worked out a deal where he'd become involved in a titanium mining operation. But at his trial, lawyers for Williams argued that he hadn't been bribed because the stock was worthless. It was the beefsteaks mine from an old W.C. Fields.
Well.
Okay. So.
Right. Now you can just say it's a gratuity and get away with it.
Right. To continue the story, this now comes in Daily Kost's election summary this morning.
Okay.
No senator has been expelled since 1862.
Expelled,
And that's where Bob Menedez comes in. The other scandals I mentioned, because they all blend together, the Keating Five, that's the one that involved McCain, and the House banking scandal, which is later. That was in the 90s. What happened there is the House bank allows members to overdraw and, without even giving security, they'll just cover your check for you. And so, everybody in the House did this.
Yeah.
And that was bad, and 77 members either lost election or resigned because of it. But those are the big 3 scandals, and only the Keating Five involved McCain. Abscam I sort of remember, but I didn't realize it was like a decade earlier. And the important part is that Bob Menedez, of course, is convicted on all 16 counts of various and sundry things, including bribery, acting as a foreign agent for Egypt, obstruction of justice, extortion, conspiring to commit crimes, having bad taste in gold bars. I mean, there's a number of things that, he got convicted from. And so now the governor, Phil Murphy, Democrat, New Jersey, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer say to Menedez, you know what? You've been convicted. You really need to resign.
Yeah.
So what happens next? That's why I'm going back to Harrison Williams before we get to Menedez. What's the path there?
Yeah.
What's the process? So Daily Kos election says, well, no senator's been expelled since 1862. Because Schumer said, look, if you don't resign, we're going to expel you.
Yeah.
Easy to say, hard to do.
You remember why they got expelled, the last one, right?
Several others resigned in disgrace, and that includes Harrison Williams, a New Jersey Democrat who was convicted in May of 1981 for corruption in the wide-ranging scandal nicknamed Abscam.
Yeah.
Now, Williams refused to resign. Democrats sought to change his mind because there was an election. Republican Tom Keene was going to take over from Democrat Brendan Byrne, and the Democrats wanted the governor to appoint a Democrat.
Yes.
And Williams refused to resign. So Brendan Byrne went to his successor, Tom Keene, and said, look, just be fair. Here's the person I would appoint. And Keene said, fine. And, of course, he appointed a Republican. So, that's the way things
work.
But the point is, Williams initially refused to resign.
Yeah.
And then Williams quit in the end when he realized that he was, going to get kicked out.
Yeah, and he...
But the point is, it's really hard to kick somebody out. And we'll probably wait for after the break to do this.
Okay.
But the reason we're talking about 19th century last time somebody got kicked out of the Senate is that there's all sorts of process hoops one has to jump through. And with a 50-50 Senate and essentially 50-50 Senate, for practical purposes, how do you do that? In order to kick somebody out, you need 2/3. And the question on the table is, would Republicans go along with it? Now, Phil Murphy's a Democrat. If he stepped down, there would still be a Democrat appointed. It won't be Andy Kim, who will be the new senator in November, because Phil Murphy already announced that he would do an interim appointment.
Okay.
Not a permanent. He doesn't want to, give somebody a leg up in an election. That's good government stuff that Democrats tend to do.
Yeah, that's what they did after Williams,
like
I
California.
Guess. Yeah, okay. But, all right, so he has an interest in a caretaker for the seat?
Yeah, so caretaker for the seat and then an election where Andy Kim will win.
Okay.
So we'll talk about the process, about what kind of threat this really is to Menendez, who so far has refused to resign. He resigned his Democratic Party.
That he was
and
quick
he's now
to
an independent.
Yeah, well, he's thought about that before, so it doesn't surprise me terribly. By the way, the replacement for Harrison Williams, Nicholas Brady. That's where he came from. Who knew?
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. More discussion during the break. We were talking about Nicholas F. Brady, former Secretary of the Treasury, who actually filled that New Jersey Senate seat from April to December of 1982, because everyone remembers that, and still alive and kicking at the age of, 94, not 92, so we'll have him on the show next. They can usually
just to flesh out the news here, Fox News is reporting an hour ago Trump called the widow of the firefighter who died protecting his family. He was very kind, she said.
She took the call.
That's normal. That's exactly what you would expect. I don't understand why he didn't call yesterday, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Where were you? Who cares? Right. He had things to do. He had to put a fake bandage on his ear, etc. It took a very long time. Have to do the hair.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway.
Yep.
So this is from Fox News in an article entitled "The Hitchhiker's Guide to Expelling a Senator."
Oh, all right.
Right. So the Senate has only expelled 15 of its members in U.S. history. In fact, the last was Senator Jesse Bright, Democrat of Indiana, 1862.
Why?
Points if you can remember why. I have no idea. I really don't care. This is why a number of lawmakers are calling on Menendez to resign rather than be expelled. The reason it ain't easy, says the article, here's the process. So a senator draws up a resolution to expel Menendez. And the Constitution requires 2/3 vote to expel, but doesn't go to the floor right away.
No, why would it do that?
In theory, somebody, and I don't know exactly the mechanism here, maybe the Democrats, but it could be referred immediately to ethics.
Okay, I mean, you could make that motion.
Ethics could take it and bottle it up for years, or they could take it and say, nope, he's convicted, and take 15 minutes.
Okay.
So they could send out its report to the conduct Menendez quickly, then the measure goes to the floor. Now, if it is in committee, you could try a motion to discharge to get it out of committee, but you obviously need the cooperation of Republicans. So regardless, the Senate has to then vote to proceed to the expulsion resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Proceeding to the expulsion resolution, simple majority, no filibuster, no cloture.
Okay.
In the Senate. All right. So once you get ethics out of the picture, you bring up a motion to chuck them out, and then it goes to the floor.
All right. Then
they can debate it forever.
Yes, they can't filibuster the motion to bring it there. They can filibuster the expulsion if anybody wants to.
So if you want to break the filibuster, you need cloture. We're all familiar with that by now. That takes 60.
Yeah, unless it doesn't.
And then if you get your 60, then you have to vote on the expulsion.
Right.
That takes 2/3.
Yeah.
So you could get enough Republicans to file cloture and still not get enough to kick them out.
You could.
Or you can get enough to kick them out. So it can be done, but you got to jump through all of those hoops to get there. So I don't know how much of a realistic threat it really is that Schumer can make to him. I mean, he can put his office in the basement.
Yeah.
But I don't know what else he could do.
No, although, I mean, in order for him to remain in office, and it could happen, and you never know. I mean, Republicans would have to do the explaining thing where they say, yes, we're voting to keep a corrupt, convicted senator in the Senate because we think it'll be embarrassing for Democrats, though they don't want anything to do with them and they have a replacement all lined up. But somehow you're supposed to believe that this, and then I guess, I don't know whether they think Menendez would start voting with them in exchange, but it's, yeah, I mean, I would think it's actually probably more likely that they would say, no, that's all right, I'll vote to expel him. He's convicted, sure. There will be some weirdo cantankerous people who might opt for the other thing, and that might be enough because you only need 1/3 of the Senate to opt for that. But yeah, I would think going into an election like, yeah, I'm the guy who voted to keep the guy who stole the gold bars in the Senate. Yeah, but I mean, he's from the other party and I was trying to embarrass him. That's a very difficult explainer, really.
Right. And then one other little codicil, little footnote here to the process.
If anyone asks.
If somebody wants to completely bypass the ethics committee.
Oh, I'd love to. Let's do that.
Well, then you put a resolution to expel on the floor and do it right away. But that would require unanimous consent.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would certainly be the fastest way to do that.
The problem
if
with that?
If it gets to ethics first.
The obvious problem with that?
Yeah.
99-1. Menendez is still a senator.
All right. I can't hear you. You can try. He's pounding the gavel. The senator... The weird shaped, the senator-shaped guy from New Jersey. I can't understand what you're saying.
Right, senator-shaped cutout who's sitting at the desk over there has something to say, but I can't hear him, so I'm not recognizing him.
Right.
Anyway, it's complicated.
Yes.
But there's all sorts of different ways one can do that, and I think this is a wonderful example of how process is merely a tool. To invoke the Senate's will, and if the will isn't there, it doesn't matter whether you have a good process or a bad process. And if the will is there, it doesn't matter whether you have a good process or a bad process.
Yeah.
But being a master of the process allows you to do this smoothly.
Yes, and of course some agreement from the others. And not only does it not matter whether you have a good process or a bad process in some ways, but it doesn't matter whether you have good intention or bad intention. A good process can still be manipulated with people with bad intention. But yeah, it's a great example of the realities of, why don't you justism, right? Why don't everyone knows he's guilty? How could they not just chuck him out? They should do that in 10 minutes Yeah, well, I mean, in order to make it official,
it takes at least 15.
You gotta ask everybody, is this what the Senate wants to do? And there are 10 different ways to gum that up. So right. Interesting, and it explains a lot. And why don't they just Well, why don't they just expand the Supreme Court? Well, in order to do that, it takes XYZ process. Well, why don't they start the process? That's a different question.
Right. So I'm going to give you a smorgasbord of things. This is all from the Pundit Roundup now.
Things.
Which I think I sent you.
All right. I know where it is.
Good. Sometimes this list that I send you on the fly gets so long it's hard to find stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll put it on the bottom anyway to make it easy.
I can see it already. And also I understand it is at daily, what is this? KOS.com. Yeah. I can go there and find it.
Yeah, it's an island in Greece.
Yep. It is.
This is from, unfortunately, it's the first one I have here. That's not unfortunate. What's unfortunate is behind a paywall.
I see.
But it's conservative Nolan Finley who does the op-ed page at the Detroit News.
Finley.
And the title of the article is My Beef with J.D. Vance.
Oh, okay.
And basically he said hillbilly elegy is like disgusting. I'm from the area. I hate when people call us hillbillies. He writes, Vance's pen fuels the myths and confirms to many what they're certain they know about hillbillies. Let's start with the book title itself and get this settled. Hillbilly is a pejorative, the same as any other derogatory descriptor assigned to a racial, ethnic, or cultural group. It doesn't matter that it was used in the title of a TV show, on bread wrappers. It's offensive, it's hurtful, it's intended to belittle. Anybody who's been the target of the word knows its sting. That Vance chose to mainstream the smear on his book cover says a lot about how he views his own people.
Okay.
And he goes on, he's not happy with him.
Right.
Let's just say.
I can understand that. I didn't know it was on a bread wrapper, but I'll look that up.
I don't know that either.
I'm curious now.
I don't know if you remember the game Dance Dance Revolution from a decade ago.
Hellbill. I remember Clog Revolution.
Yeah. Well, this is Seth Maskett writing.
Yeah.
RNC Day 1, Vance Revolution. A harsh critic becomes heir apparent.
Yeah.
To me, he says, Vance's rise to this point of trust in the Trump world is a terrific example of just how easy it is to work one's way into Trump's good graces. As many others have noted today, Vance has not been a fan of Donald Trump for all that long. He at one point called Trump an idiot who was reprehensible and said he might be America's Hitler. When I read that cartoon, that's an actual quote from Vance. Vance would later soften his criticism, become far more embracing. In 2022, Vance called Trump the greatest president in my lifetime, wooing Trump's endorsement for his Senate run. Trump rewarded him. One of the things that may have helped close the deal was Vance's strong rhetorical flourishes in the wake of the assassination attempt, in which Vance specifically blamed Democrats for creating the conditions of the violence, and we know he got strong lobbying from Merrick and Don Jr., and he doesn't like people who keep attacking him, but he doesn't necessarily hold a grudge, and the person's willing to bend the knee. See Nikki Haley.
Yes.
See Lindsey Graham.
All right.
Okay. And the Republicans who have been run out of politics in Trump's era, from Flake to Romney, have largely been run out because they refuse to say the effusive things about Trump. So, that's what's going on here. Basically, if you're a suck-up, you're forgiven. Because he likes to humiliate people in public. That's his thing.
Yeah. Well, he's doing it.
Now, I'm going to throw this in quickly just because, people get depressed. Don't get too depressed. There's still an election to be won. What do you think of Mr. Nevada? Said somebody to John Ralston. Is Nevada out of reach for Biden? And Ralston says, of course not.
Okay.
Nobody knows Nevada like he does. So I thought that was of interest.
Yes. I'm in agreement.
Okay. Next. Another guy that was up at the convention was the Teamsters guy.
Oh, yeah.
Endorsing
he's at the
Trump,
convention.
But screaming at business how they're all corrupt and such because, he's totally populist. Again, between Vance and this guy, the Reagan Republicans and the Chamber of Commerce people are not at all comfortable. So John Storr at the editorial board writes, Biden bailed out the Teamsters pension fund by the tune of $36 billion. And then the Teamsters president decided it was a good idea to deliver a speech at the RNC. What does a president have to do? Democrat anyway. And he goes on to add, I mean, if Biden loses after saving the country from the COVID, dodging a recession, investing billions in public goods, and so much more, what kind of incentive does any Democratic president have to solve any problems?
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it's a good question.
Yeah. No one seems to appreciate that stuff, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Teamsters have always been a weird union, politically speaking.
Right.
So
they often will, they were Nixon people.
Yeah. So if it wasn't for that, I would say, oh, maybe it was a brilliant thing to do to say, oh, yeah, I'm here to endorse Trump. And then you give a speech yelling at all the business people right in front of them.
Wasn't it the Teamsters that also drove an 18-wheeler onto the stage at Daily Kos when we were there?
Yes, it depends who onto the stage, but onto the back patio of the convention center. It was very interesting and exciting, and they swing.
They
like
let Marcos drive.
Yeah. Oh, he should have done if he had known to do at that point the Trump face of getting behind an 18-wheeler and making the sound and the face, the scrunched up face. But yeah, like
I only remember that because Mike Gravel, the then former senator from Alaska who was running for president at the time,
yes,
in a quixotic attempt, loved truck. He just went crazy over trucks,
like Trump,
and he just gushed over the trucks, and that's all he really cared about. And
yeah,
that was his platform position.
Well,
you know how Mary Peltola says she's pro-fish? Oh, Mike Gravel is pro-truck.
Interesting. Okay. Well, kids like trucks, kids like dinosaurs, construction equipment, right. All sorts of things like that. I found hillbilly bread, by the way. I'll send you a picture.
Oh, good. Anyway, this is Bill Scher. Writing from Washington Monthly. Get a grip, Democrats. You can still win this. Biden's not far behind. The economic conditions remain excellent. A vile assassination attempt in July doesn't determine November's outcome, which is true. Remember Gerald Ford, shot at twice.
Yeah,
lost.
By wolves.
Yeah, by wolves.
Sorry.
So the fundamentals remain favorable to Democrats. Gross domestic product. Gross democratic product is growing.
Ew, gross.
Unemployment is low. Wages have been beating inflation for more than a year. American soldiers aren't dying in an unpopular ground war. For over a century, incumbent parties in power have won American elections under these conditions. So unusual factors, but defeatism guarantees defeat. So don't work on it.
It's one of the most successful isms out there, I guess. Defeatism. So, all right, don't do it. What else should we not be doing?
Bread eating. That's basically the summary of what's going on here.
I am grateful for that. I think this is supposed to mean that hillbilly bread is still available.
I guess. I'm looking at the picture. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, I mean, they could use some help in getting rid of this. I mean, we changed the name of the football team with a little bit of pressure.
Look, when I was growing up, the Romani were called gypsies, and nobody explained why, but they just all were.
Yeah. I mean, and it wasn't clear for the longest time. I don't understand what are you upset about? Well, that's not the name that's not our name, and it's derogatory. Oh, damn.
I didn't learn that until, way later in life.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's something that they want to organize and work on, or maybe 9/10 of them don't.
Well, the point is, J.D. Vance is a 24-karat.
He's a jerk.
He's a guy from Appalachia. He says.
Sorta.
The funny thing is, as you know,
yes,
when somebody has something happen to them, local papers generally will always look for a local angle.
Yeah, well, that's so fun.
Like the Brooklyn Eagle, Brooklyn man gets convicted.
Right. Yeah. Do they have
felonies? Florida man gets elected. We're talking about Trump, depending upon what paper you're looking at. And so my local paper said, Yale law graduate J.D. Vance picked for vice president.
Yeah, all right.
And okay, it's a local angle. I get that.
Sure.
But it really underlines the point. Look, he is not an Appalachian in that sense. I mean, he grew up on the other side of Ohio.
Yeah, he's from Cincinnati.
He went to Yale. He's an elitist. And, the whole thing's garbage. But then again, everything about him is a lie.
Yeah, and if he wasn't he may not have grown up as an elitist, but he's certainly been he's dipped in the elitist
which is why Nolan Finley was so upset by everything about J.D. Vance.
And then they illustrated the piece I noticed of the picture of the new J.D. Vance in his skinny tailored suits. But that's the shtick with him. I guess he was born in Appalachia, but very quickly out of the hands of his natural parents and into the hands of grandparents, and then raised in the suburbs of Cincinnati, essentially. And while that's not exactly East Coast elitist all by itself,
it's
this
not
idea
exactly
that,
a coal mine.
Yeah, it's not. And then off to Yale, and then, by the way, off to San Francisco, and then very quickly after that off to Washington, D.C. People pointing out he loves to do the hokey things. Someone showed me a tweet of his. He was on his way to New York and saying, oh, what do I have to be aware of? Am I going to be mugged everywhere I go? So much crime. Oh, no. Like, I'm so afraid of the big city because I'm such a country boy. And it's like, you live in San Francisco and Washington, D.C. and Cincinnati. Although somebody did point out, there's a whole corridor of Appalachian Pennsylvania where he's supposed to be, hot stuff because hillbilly elegy. But instead, you should be, someone said, 2,000 billboards throughout Steelers country that this MFer is from Cincinnati probably would go further than pointing out the hypocrisy.
Right, exactly right.
Okay.
Anyway, that's it for me for today.
Yeah, all right. We can accept that. That's an excellent
I am not
submission.
spending a tremendous amount of time. In fact, I haven't watched a moment live
of
the Republican National Convention. And this is the week you turn cable off because, it's stupid.
Yes. Well, I should turn cable off because none of the channels work anymore, and I didn't notice it, which means I guess I can cut that cable. But as it turns out, when there were a few events like, what's his name? That guy, he was in trouble over on Saturday. There was some blood. And I went to look at CNN, and I can't get it. It's gone. I don't have it anymore. It's weird. So I guess it's time to switch over to streaming services instead. Okay. This is a good time for it. Great time to not have network channels or CNN. It's fantastic. But eventually I'm going to need some information. All right, well, thank you, Greg, and we will do it again tomorrow, and they will refill your coffers with more news, I am sure.
They tend to do that.
Yep.
Take care, and talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you. All right, and the rest of you stay tuned. You can get Hillbilly Bread online if you are interested, but I think the idea here is we should not be participating in this.
That's right.
But interesting that it's still there.
Don't use the term hillbilly. Unless you're referring to the TV show, and even then do it carefully.
No, well, we have to for a while for the book. But
you don't have to be politically correct if you say Beverly Hillbillies and you're actually talking about the show. Right.
And, I don't think we knew very well how hurtful it was. Like the old gypsy term, it took a campaign to get everybody used to it. But that was the reference for the longest time for describing Sarah Palin. And now we find out, hey, and then interestingly, we found out in the entirety of the decade following, Appalachian populace was very unhappy with Democrats and liberals in general. I think they were going to be anyway, but that probably couldn't have helped a great deal.
In any case,
so it's something to think
about.
Take
care, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, we can do that. Thanks again. And I'll move on to other subjects. And you can feel free. By the way, if you want, I know you're always worried about the sounds that Skype makes. I can give that direction to our new editor-in-chief if you're worried about the sound. Don't.
Right.
We can take care of it.
Senior editor.
Yes, that's right. He's the most senior one I've got.
Yeah.
So
take care.
Thank you. You too. All right. So let's see. What instruction? I don't know now what instruction to give him. Keep it. The fans love it. Okay, so into pocket, I think, is where we go with this. Do you want to know anything about the supposedly detected Iranian plot to kill Trump? I mean, it's kind of exciting in the international intrigue sense. And I'd like to know a little bit about, what do you mean? Is this just standard Iranian background noise, or is it more specific? And it seems like it's more specific. So it sounds like maybe we should take a look. U.S. detected potential Iranian plot to kill Trump separate from Saturday's shooting. Important point. American intelligence agencies were tracking an Iranian threat even before the attack on former President Donald J. Trump. It's the New York Times. But officials said the two were unrelated. That's not hard to believe. This is, gets the top treatment at the New York Times and everything. Peter Baker, Adam Goldman, Julian E. Barnes. U.S. intelligence agencies were tracking this potential Iranian assassination plot against former President Donald Trump in the weeks before a gunman opened fire last weekend, several officials said on Tuesday, but they added that they did not consider the threat related to that shooting that actually wounded Mr. Trump. The intelligence prompted the Secret Service to enhance security for the former president before his outdoor campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday, officials said. So they knew, they took it seriously enough to say some sort of enhanced security. I don't know what they did. They're probably not going to tell us exactly what they did for operational reasons. But these guys say some additional security was in place. And yet, I guess maybe they were looking for Iranians and missed this guy. Yet, whatever additional measures were taken did not stop a 20-year-old local man, there it is, from clambering on top of a nearby warehouse roof, which was pitched, to shoot at Mr. Trump, grazing his right ear and coming close to killing him. The National Security Council contacted the Secret Service to be sure it was tracking the latest reporting, and the agency shared the information with the head of Mr. Trump's detail, according to a national security official who, like others, shared sensitive information on condition of anonymity. I don't know if that's so super secret. We heard about a threat, and then we called a guy, and he called a guy. I mean, I assume that everybody assumes that that's the process. But, okay, the Trump campaign was informed in passing, this is interesting, quote, unquote, in passing, by the Secret Service of a general uptick in threats against Mr. Trump, but was not made aware of any specific dangers related to Iranian individuals or groups, according to a person briefed on the interactions between the campaign and the Secret Service. It was not clear what, if anything, Mr. Trump himself was told, and I can understand that. It seems reasonable. I don't know how specific the threat really was. I think you kind of always have to imagine, if you're in the Secret Service, some portion of our attention is dedicated to the possibility that the Iranians or other international actors are going to want to attempt an assassination for various reasons. Sometimes a government, sometimes non-governmental, sometimes terrorists, sometimes lone kooks, what have you, plus our own domestic problems. And I don't imagine it would make any sense. Well, it never makes any sense to brief Donald Trump on anything with regard to security. One, it'll just panic your subject if he believes you. Or two, he'll go out on stage and say, "Can you believe it? The Iranians are trying to assassinate me." And, that's not going to help anything either. So that's probably the best thing that they could do. There's a general uptick in threats, but you know how it is. The intelligence that prompted the warning was new, but consistent with previous threat information against lower-level current and former U.S. officials, according to officials informed about the matter. The intensifying campaign season with increasingly frequent public rallies offered more opportunities for an attack. Several national security officials said that although the threat was taken seriously, it did not appear from the intelligence to be fully developed. So, sounds more aspirational than anything else. Officials would not discuss how they had come by the information, they rarely do, but said that their conclusion was drawn from multiple strands of intelligence collected by multiple agencies that were not clear until they were all put together into a single picture. While Iran has targeted Americans before, trying to assassinate a former president now running for his old office would be a dramatic escalation that could risk war. So U.S. officials were trying to determine if it was merely aspirational or whether there was a concrete plan. Either way, several officials said the Secret Service had recently surged additional resources and assets, as they put it, although they declined to describe specifically what changes had been made. I can understand that, but for people scratching their head about why was there a counter sniper team, could that have been one of the additional resources and assets that were surged? I guess so. I don't know how many they have to spare, but unless you're saying, no, there wasn't a counter-sniper team there, even though everybody says there was one, then I don't know what the beef is. I don't know. I was having a discussion with somebody online about it, and they were like, yeah, but there's limited resources in that area. Yeah, and so they assigned some of them. What's the problem? But anyway, the fact that security was already enhanced for the Butler rally because of the apparently unrelated threat will raise further questions about the failure of the Secret Service to protect Mr. Trump from the actual threat that day. One U.S. official briefed on the intelligence was sharply critical of the Secret Service for allowing the Pennsylvania gunman to get so close, arguing that the agency's knowledge of the Iranian threat should have prompted it to be more cautious. Oddly, that's probably even it's a Republican, and here I am saying, well, yeah, I guess so, right? That seems sensible. President Biden has already ordered an independent review of the security breakdown in Butler, and Congress is planning its own inquiries. And if it's in the House, I assume they'll be irresponsible and dangerous, because Republicans run that place. Authorities have identified Saturday's gunman, of course, Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old from nearby Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, but have yet to publicly describe any motivation for the shooting. Crooks, killed by Secret Service snipers, registered Republican, but they're still on with this one, but once gave $15 to a progressive political group. So this is interesting because I keep seeing people insist, no, that has been debunked. But I guess the New York Times either doesn't believe the debunking or hasn't gotten the memo or I don't know what, or maybe it's just turns out to be true and the debunking isn't correct. I don't know. But it doesn't matter very much. He left no social media trail that revealed any strong political feelings. People who knew him said he kept to himself, but he was often bullied in high school. The Iranian threat stems from Tehran's longstanding desire to take revenge for the strike ordered by Trump in January of 2020. I wonder if there was anything going on at that point. That killed Major General Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian security and intelligence commander responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American troops in Iraq over the years. Reported Iranian threats against the Trump administration officials like Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, and John Bolton, worldwide internationally renowned singer and national security advisor, resulted in government security details even after they left office. As we've said many times, we've been tracking Iranian threats for a long time. So long, in fact, that you forgot to start the music 13 seconds ago. So, all right, some awkward exit with the music and notes to the editor on this one. All right, as we've said many times, they've been tracking Iranian threats for a number of years, dating back to the last administration, according to a National Security Council spokesperson. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, entering into the show in a weird place. This will, again, cause some editing alarm, but I think we can take care of it. He's actually become quite skilled in the time that he's been spending on this. So, all right, let's see. We left off in the middle of the article about the Iranian threat, and I got one eye on everything going on in Nazareth. We have a bug bite. What appears to be, or a spider bite or something like that. It's quite annoying. Not on me, but on one of the fellow production staff, let's say, who has come downstairs to let me know. So I got one eye on that. It's not a crisis, but poor guy. All right. Well, at any rate, as we left off, right, threats from Iran, nothing new. Major motivator, it is said, the revenge, interestingly, against the guy who's running on the platform of revenge for the killing of Qasem Soleimani, and NSC saying we consider this a national and homeland security matter of the highest priority. The spokesperson, by the way, was Adrian Watson, who goes on to emphasize that the Iranian plot was separate from the Butler assassination attempt. I think everybody has figured that out. That's actually the end of the article, so we can just leave it there. I'd say, if I had known prior to resuming after the break, that we were done and we can move on to something else, which we can do now. So, about 200 million other things to discuss, and some of it I guess we'll keep in pocket, and I've been making an effort to try to record some things for next week, and we'll see whether it all comes together. I'd hate to overpromise, but I've just done it. So, I hate this show. This particular episode in which I overpromise. Okay, so let's see. Oh, we did that one already. I got that. I guess this one is some of these things are sort of breaking hot news that if I discuss them next week, it won't make any sense. Others are further analysis on things that are hot news that might make sense next week. So let's use this one just so we're up to speed. I mean, it's on a subject that nobody cares about, but you might enjoy pointing and laughing. The subject that nobody cares about, RFK Jr. So there's something going on, and it's timely, and it's stupid, and I guess I'll tell you all about it. I have here the Guardian's coverage of this. RFK Jr. apologizes, which they've spelled, as you know, incorrectly because they spell it with an S instead of a Z, and we hold it against them, and among other truths that we hold to be self-evident, you spell apologizes differently. RFK Jr. apologizes after leaked phone call in which Trump seems to offer deal. It's very weird and confusing and stupid all around. Independent candidate's son posts video online in which Republican also rambles about vaccines, horses, and babies. I think the Guardian generally has the right idea here in making Donald Trump sound addled and out of it, and to the extent possible, RFK Jr. as well. Plus, this whole incident illustrates his family hates him. Even his kids, I guess, or at least one of them, because they leaked the audio. The independent presidential candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And here I appreciate the Englishisms, the Britishism in the way, the mode of reporting. And maybe it's just Guardian style, or I don't know whether it's all English, British newspapers. That in our newspaper, in the New York Times, they would make sure of it being printed as Robert F. period, Kennedy, comma, Jr. period. And the British, or at least the Guardian, appears to have done away with all of that. And just so the independent presidential candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., it's not all one word, but no period after the F, no comma before the Jr., etc. So I like that. But what did he do? He apologized, said, to Donald Trump on Tuesday. And again, here I'm glad for the informality because if it was the New York Times, it would have to say, apologized to presidential candidate Donald J. Trump on Tuesday after Kennedy's son posted video and audio of a call between the two men in which Trump made bizarre remarks about vaccines and babies, as well as appearing to offer Kennedy some sort of political deal, which would have been a bizarre remark all by itself. When President Trump called me, I was taping with an in-house videographer, Kennedy said. I should have ordered the videographer to stop recording immediately. By the way, this seems to be a real disease among well, at least among Republican political actors and would-be Republicans like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., though I think he first tried to be a Democrat and that didn't work. But he's basically running a Republican campaign at this point, if he can be said to be running one at all. But I keep thinking of the videographers that were recording everything around like Roger Stone on and just before January 6th. Like, why didn't you tell them to stop? But they just love being on camera. And, of course, it takes a Kennedy to have an in-house videographer. But I assume they mean in-house, the house meaning campaign. But he was also in his house. Anyway, I should have ordered the videographer to stop recording immediately. I am mortified that this was posted. I apologize to the president. So, again, sorry I got caught. He is Republican. The call was apparently made before Trump and Kennedy's later meeting on Monday. I don't think I actually knew anything about that meeting. I'm sure it was reported somewhere, but I don't care about either of those two guys. So they met on Monday at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, reportedly to discuss the possibility of Kennedy endorsing Trump. I don't know whether that's really in the offing, but Trump's certainly going to try to, coax that out of him. You got no chance of winning. You can only screw up the Democrats if you endorse me. The recording was posted online by Kennedy's son, Bobby Kennedy III, with the message, I am a firm believer that these sorts of conversations should be had in public. Here's Trump giving his real opinion to my dad about vaccinating kids. This was the day after the assassination attempt, which I think is also a very interesting detail. Like, he wasn't calling the family of the person that died at the rally, but he was calling Bobby Kennedy to say, something, sharks, babies, vaccines, I don't know, you should endorse me. That he had time for. Trump survived an assassination attempt on Saturday during a rally. It's a little pause in that one. I just mentally sighed, but okay. During a rally in Pennsylvania, when a gunman with an AR-15 style rifle opened fire from a nearby rooftop, it was pitched, by the way. I don't know if you've heard, grazing the president's ear and killing a rally goer. I mean, that should be in every sentence now. The way they introduce Tommy Lee, troubled rocker Tommy Lee, pitched roof. Robert Kennedy Jr.'s father. This is The Guardian. Remember, so might be talking to a British audience here. If you don't remember, U.S. Attorney General and Senator Robert F. Kennedy and his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, and no periods for any of the Fs here, were assassinated in the 1960s. After the Trump shooting, Joe Biden ordered the Secret Service to protect Kennedy. So, okay. I didn't know that, but I assumed that it was true. The video of the Trump-Kennedy call is a little over 1 minute and 40 seconds long. It shows Kennedy standing close to a U.S. flag in a dimly lit room, holding a phone and listening to Trump on speaker. Parts of Trump's remarks are hard to hear. The whole thing is probably hard to understand, but he can be heard speaking about a subject close to Kennedy's heart, the supposed dangers of vaccinations. So here is a tweet with the video of it attached that is embedded in the article here from Meredith McGraw, which reads, a video of Trump's call with RFK Jr. was leaked. Trump talks about vaccines, tells RFK Jr. doing something with him would be big, mentioned his call with Biden, and said the bullet was like the world's largest mosquito. Okay. RFK Jr. apologized for the leak. And I would apologize probably for the content of the call. It was the dumbest thing I ever heard. A former environmental attorney, Kennedy rose to prominence before and during the COVID pandemic by spreading conspiracy theories about vaccines and their supposed effects. I think that glosses over a little bit more of his history. He's been spreading nonsense about vaccines for a very long time. He had a radio show, and some of it was reasonable, and the rest of it was garbage. And the garbage was so garbage that it was not worth listening to the radio show. Trump was president in the first year of the pandemic, we're reminded, a period of rapid development of COVID vaccines, but also growing right-wing distrust of public health directives. In his call with Kennedy, Trump says, I agree with you, man. He says, man, that's nice. Something's wrong with that whole system. Very specific. He's got the details. He's got command of the facts. He's got access to all sorts of briefings. I agree. Something's wrong with that old system. Kennedy says, yeah. That's what he says. Yeah. All right. Thank you. There's Robert F. Kennedy. That's what it's like to talk to him. Hello. Is this Robert F. Kennedy? Yeah. All right. Well, good. How are you doing? All right. Well, I don't think I have anything else to add to that. But okay. Trump was, let's see. Trump continues. And it's the doctors you find. Remember, I said, I want to do small doses. Small doses. No one remembers you saying anything like that, but maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but it didn't matter because it was stupid. Anyway, his words then at that point, only at that point, do they take a bizarre turn. Ready for this? I guess this is him trying to explain small doses. I think what he's thinking, in case you were looking for the grain of truth, behind it. There's no truth, but the grain of sense maybe that he started with. I guess Trump is trying to say that his claim was that the vaccines, the COVID vaccine, he still wants credit for it, but that he was saying, I want it given in small doses, a little bit at a time, just a couple of small shots so that there's no big dose all at once because for some reason I think that's more dangerous. And the reason is that he's bought into conspiracy theories about vaccines and autism, et cetera, and vaccinating infants. So, I mean, there's an articulable concern there. It may not be a medically significant concern, but it could be articulated and then refuted probably also in an articulate way. But Trump is instead not only mashing together various unfounded conspiracy theories, but making it unintelligible along the way. So here's what he says. When you feed a baby, Bobby, a vaccination, which is not, you don't feed a baby a vaccination, that is like 38 different vaccines, or maybe 3, sometimes 4 perhaps, because, but he says 38 different vaccines, and it looks like it's meant for a horse, not a, 10-pound or 20-pound baby. It looks like you should be giving a horse this thing. And did you ever see the size of it? It's massive. And then you see the baby all of a sudden starting to change radically. I've seen it too many times. No, we haven't. I don't know how much you would have to put up to cover this bet. I don't know. But anyone want to take bets on whether or not Donald Trump took any of his kids to their baby checkup and vaccination with the pediatrician? No chance. None. Zero. I've seen it too many times. Zero. And of course, if you had seen it, like what he's describing, like usually when you talk about something massive that shouldn't be given to it's a horse thing, a horse pill. Like vaccines aren't given by pills. It's not entirely clear. Maybe he should be talking about a massive syringe, a gigantic syringe that you might use to vaccinate a horse. And that's not what they use for babies ever. That's dumb. Even the multiple the multiple disease vaccines, the vaccine dose is the regular size dose. They use a regular size syringe. I've been to those things. I've seen it too many times, I guess. Or maybe he's trying to say, I've seen it too many times. I did go to my kids' vaccinations. I have too many kids. That's a possibility. But and then I like that too. It's massive, and then you see the baby all of a sudden starting to change radically. Like he turned into Baby Hulk. Arr, gamma rays, MMR vaccine. Rah. The babies don't change radically or otherwise. You've not seen it too many times, but he knows he's trying to pitch an anti-vaxxer on signing up with him and endorsing his campaign. So he's saying what he thinks needs to be said. He's just dumb and doesn't have any real idea what kind of mishmash is going to work. So there you go. And I like to, a 10 or 20 pound baby. I mean, if you're talking to like newborn vaccinations, 20 pound baby, holy cow. It's a baby, Michael. How much could it weigh? 20 pounds? So what's going on with this guy? Anyway, I've seen it too many times. And then you hear that it doesn't have an impact, right? But you and I talked about that a long time ago. And I guess he's trying to say here what the doctors say. No, it doesn't change babies instantly into hulks or anything else. And it's not a horse-sized syringe. They try to tell us it doesn't have an impact, but you and I have talked about it for a long time. Trump then appears to suggest the two men work together. You're crazy, I'm crazy. I got no business near the White House. You've got no business near the White House. Why don't we get together and F this country up? What he actually says is, anyway, I would love you to do something. I would love you to do something for me. And I think it would be so good for you and so big for you. This is, of course, Trump. I'm being sly and diplomatic here. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell him this is great for him. I mean, this is a favor for me, but it will be so good for you. You should listen to me because I know what's good. Kennedy listens. Trump's words become hard to make out. He describes the shooting in Pennsylvania, saying the bullet that grazed him, quote, sounded like the world's largest mosquito. It's an AR-15 or something, says the former president. This is exactly what you would think he would be saying to people about his shooting. Listen to this. It's an AR-15 or something, says the former president, who rejects efforts for gun control reform. They helpfully note that's a good call. That's a big gun. Those are pretty tough guns, right? Pretty tough guns. When I get shot, I'm going to get shot by a pretty tough gun. You can't shoot me with a wimpy, stupid gun, like maybe a tiny little pistol with my face etched on the pistol grip, which there are. Anyway, in posting the recording, Bobby Kennedy III also suggested Anthony Fauci, formerly Biden's chief medical advisor, should be in prison. So I guess if you were thinking, well, is Bobby Kennedy the third anti-vaxxer? Does he disagree with his dad? No. He just has this bizarre notion, that they shouldn't be hiding these machinations, which I guess they shouldn't. Although it's not uncommon to hide them, and I don't think it's illegal, certainly. But so he has this weird idea about transparency, but he actually, it would be odd if he disagreed so vehemently with his father, and his father let him hang out nearby while he was doing campaign stuff. That would seem unwise. But as it is, they agreed, and it was unwise. But so in posting the recording, Bobby Kennedy III also suggested Anthony Fauci should be in prison, appeared to suggest his father should have been Trump's running mate on a, quote, unity ticket. And that, that's a big theme now, unity. Unity with what? I don't know. Rather than JD fire all the unvaccinated nurses, Vance. Did Vance say that they should do that? That's interesting. The Ohio senator, of course, named on Monday, and implied Republicans and Democrats were subordinate to Pfizer, a multinational vaccine producer. Kennedy III added, I've been brought up in a terrible household. I'm very ill, et cetera, et cetera. But he says, this is not a cheap fake or somebody doing a Trump voice. This is the real deal. That's right. It's the real deal. It's true. Don't believe it. So okay, it's not cheap. I like that. My this is not a cheap fake T-shirt is prompting a lot of questions answered by this is not a cheap fake. Okay, you got the idea. Polling shows that Kennedy could influence the presidential race. This is the Guardian. They don't know. In key states, debate continues over whether he pulls more support from Biden or Trump. Kennedy's spokesperson, Stephanie Speer, confirmed the two men met at the RNC in Milwaukee, claiming it was to discuss national unity and saying that Kennedy hopes to meet with leaders of the Democratic Party as well. And no, he is not dropping out of the race. He is the only pro-environment, pro-choice, anti-war candidate who beats Donald Trump in head-to-head polls. Well, no. Anyway, that's I thought that was kind of interesting, and I guess we got to have his background because I have a feeling some dumb, weird thing is going to develop from all this, and we're not going to understand it. Though, honestly, it involves Bobby Kennedy Jr. and the third, and we're not going to understand what's happening no matter what. Okay, so, man, that seems weird, don't you think? All right, let's see. What else have I got in store here? I have a note here that I needed to look back in my email and see what I have here. Did somebody send me something that I wanted to discuss? I think so, and I think it must be this year. Oh, yes. Jeremy Freiberger chiming in on things and saying... What do we want to add here? It was reaching back several shows at this point. Okay. Yes. Just noting that we got the note from him about the production value, right, of the show. It was another vote for don't edit out the background noise. But it was his comment, I think, that the new sound setup makes the voice, mine, sound too polished or even filtered or commercial, like too professional, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying anything that's more professional. It's not the content. It's the sound quality of the voice. So, doors open for comments on that one. I think I kind of like the filter that is on the thing. But, you can experiment with this. And I think without destroying things, you can turn the dynamic processor, which is what's responsible for this new sound quality on my voice, on and off. And, maybe during, I don't know. I mean, I guess I should be doing it like side by side right now. Do you think it'll screw things up? All right, we'll give it a shot. If I turn off the dynamic processor, you can hear, now it's off, what it does and doesn't do to the voice quality. So I don't know. So those of you listening live can figure out whether this makes a difference in the tenor of the voice here. And and listening on podcast, where you'll get a compressed version of it, maybe it'll be more obvious to you. And now I'll turn it back on, and we'll see what you guys think about whether or not it makes a big difference in things. Okay. Hopefully that didn't screw up the show too much and doesn't create any editing problems. All right. Back over then to Pocket. Again, on the fly, I sort of marked some of these things that I said. I want to save this from for later analysis and for shows next week. But we'll see. Oh, I got a message here. Justice Putnam says, I like when it's off. How do you like that? It brings your voice forward. Is it muffling things? Because is that something you think could be fixed with volume? Or is it just the quality of the voice? All right, well, let's see. It didn't interrupt the stream any to turn it off. All right, well, let's turn it off and see what people think. And we'll do the show this way for a little while and see. And then maybe tomorrow we can experiment with the processor back on, but my volume boost. Right? I guess I could do that now, as a matter of fact, because there's no stories going on. There's no news or anything. All right, processor back on. I could turn on the overdrive and boost my volume this way. What does the meter say about, does it like this or does it dislike this? I can't find the meter. All right, there it is. All right, this could be another way of boosting things, but if it's the sound quality, and this is just a louder sounding, I'm now screaming through a pillow, that's no good. But there's this, and then there's back to lower volume and the processor off. So here we are, lower volume, processor off, and phone in your votes. It's going to be like Eurovision, and you can decide what you like best and whether it's helpful. Okay, and Scott has some notes here. This is exciting. We're all producing the show together and avoiding the news. What is Scott saying? Let's see. When it's off, the peaks are louder and it's a little hot. When it's on with the gain up is better. Okay, so that's one vote for turn the processor back on, which I'm doing now, and turn the volume back up with the overdrive, and I set that at about 145, and we'll try that for a little while. Who would like me to tell them a story now? Okay, let's go back into Pocket and see what I've got to share with you. Again, some things to decide on the fly. How about this one? Oh, more notes coming in. But okay. All of these things could be saved for later discussion, I guess. Yes. Here is a story that I thought might be of interest, and that is also parked, I think, in email, because I have reached my limit with raw story for the month. But yeah, so that's why I was fishing an email. And let's see if I can find it. And let's see who sent it to me. Was it Trevor? Okay. I'll take a look here and see if I can't dig it up. Dang. Now I will see if I can find this thing was sent. Oh, you know what? It might be in my dang. This is rather annoying. So in messages here, maybe I have it direct. But this is going to take some production now. So we have our break coming up. This is a terrible segment. I quit. This is the worst show ever. Anyway, there was a raw story entry the other day, which we should bring to the fore, but was blocked. And I'll give you the headline of it and then tease you all the way through the break. I'll need the 2 minutes, I think, to dig this up. Raw story reporting that Trump's Secretary of Retribution, as they're calling him, has a target list of 350 people he wants arrested. This is, I think, falls somewhere in the category of Project 2025. One of the people who is setting the agenda here, I don't know whether he's directly connected with 2025, but he certainly he clearly considers himself to be this secretary of retribution, the official list keeper of people that he wants arrested. So we can go over this at the break and decide whether or not you and I are on the list. Are we going to be arrested, or are we just going straight to the camps, or what? We don't know. All right. But I will dig this up, and as I recall, this was offered to me directly, somebody who hadn't run into their limits, and along with finding the actual article, I'll also be able to find clearly some indication of which one of you it was that suggested it, because it could have come from any one of 5 different sources, and now I can't remember because it's been a couple of days. And all right, and all the confusion and excitement of the Republican National Convention and all the gauze pads that are making everybody so happy, I lost track of where it came from, but not that it had come in. That's the important part.
Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Hey, how's the sound? I left it off or on with the sound boosted. I think that's where we landed. And, okay, so yes, it was our good friend Travis Rosen, who sent me this article, spotted it, and I went to look at it and ran into a paywall at Raw Story, which I didn't even realize that they had. But I guess that just means I've been relying on them for more this month than usual, or unless they lowered the threshold of their paywall. And golly, if we were a huge media conglomerate and a huge media operation here, I would be passing out subscription money left and right. But you know how it is these days. Why, inflation, it's out of control or something. And, I can't. Can I subscribe to Raw Story in this economy? Well, it's actually a pretty good economy. So I guess I could. But if I did that, well, you know how it is with food. People love it. And that's what we mostly pay for here. Okay, well, at any rate, Trump's Secretary of Retribution, I am told, has prepared a list of some 350 people that he wants arrested, and I have no doubt that they could come up with a list of 350 people. And, at some point, I'm sure he was more interested in the bulk of the list so that he could, I don't know what, scare people or make it sound like they were in trouble and people should fear Trump in general. And there may be 350 people on the list. I don't know. It may be exaggerated. It may be a junk list. It may be 100 people that MAGA generally recognizes as, deserving somehow of arrest, plus 150 people he hates, or, 100 people he hates, plus Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, et cetera, like a petition signature thing. But let's hear the story. Jordan Green and Mark Alizia are the investigative reporters who put this together on July 10th. And let's see, it's a little bit disjointed in that this is an emailed version of the text with various pop-up ads and things sort of eliminated. So there's large gaps I have to scroll through here. But retribution, as you know, is at the center of Donald Trump's third presidential election campaign. It was at the center of the others as well, even though in the first one, retribution for what? You haven't even been president yet. But then again, retribution for what after you had been president? What do you got your way on almost everything, even stupid and illegal things for 4 years. What do you need revenge for? I don't know. Retribution for not enforcing the emoluments clause against me. Retribution for throwing out all the criminal cases against me. I mean, come on. Anyway. But retribution, nonetheless, is at the center of Donald Trump's third presidential election campaign because many MAGA adherents, they themselves need retribution and revenge. They've been victimized in their view, and they want revenge for it. For instance, all those litter boxes make me angry, and I want revenge for that. Or sometimes they're even real things like I've been arrested 7 times for drunk driving, and I want retribution for that. And it doesn't matter whether it's sensible for there to be retribution. I want it, and you said you would give it to me, and that's enough. But okay, I am your warrior, Trump proclaimed earlier this year. I am your justice, and for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. And I have one ear. Trump's loyal surrogates have duly embraced the project, perhaps no one more zealously than... Who is the Secretary of Retribution? His name... Unsurprisingly, I guess somehow, even though this doesn't really indicate anything, his first name is Ivan, you might say. Interesting how many Ivans and Borises are so close to Donald Trump. Anyway, this one is Ivan Raiklin, Raiklin. You know, that household name, Ivan Raiklin. He is a retired Army Reserve Lieutenant Colonel, allegedly, and former U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency employee, like notorious super spy Mike Flynn, who was in fact director of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, which says probably more about the work that needs to be done fixing the Defense Intelligence Agency than about these guys. But so, in other words, probably a Mike Flynn acolyte here, who bills himself as the former and would-be president's, quote, future Secretary of Retribution. He's the Secretary of Nothing, of course, but, you know, and a slovenly-looking fellow, so who knows whether or not he actually enters into Trump's orbit. Trump slovenly, but, of course, doesn't want anybody else to be around him. Raiklin is seeking to enlist so-called constitutional sheriffs in rural conservative counties across the country to detain Trump's political enemies, who largely don't live in rural conservative counties, but there are certainly a few. So if you would like to be able to arrest your neighbor who made you mad by telling you to stop flying your flag upside down, or they put a F Trump sign in their lawn, so you started probably flying your Confederate flag upside down, you can have them arrested now. So that's the news. Okay. Well, all right, there's more to it. As he says, he would... This is interesting, right? He wants to enlist constitutional sheriffs across the country to... I guess I had my alarm snoozed from before. Okay. Well, at any rate, it rang again. So he's going to enlist constitutional sheriffs to detain Trump's political enemies, or, as he says, carry out live-streamed swatting raids against individuals on his deep state target list. Now, just for a moment here, because he's talking about using the power of the state in a future Trump administration, and then even though, I don't know, that's a federal power, how he compels constitutional sheriffs to do anything, I don't know. But there are constitutional sheriffs who would feel like, oh, no, these are valid orders, I should definitely go do that. But then he throws in the swatting raids, which, generally speaking, are unofficial actions meant to prompt an official response, unbeknownst to the officials responding. But here he's saying... live streaming it, like the various synagogue shooters and mass killers who are in the habit of live streaming their murders. This guy wants in on the next Trump administration, thinks he's going to be named Secretary of Retribution, and wants to not only use, where he doesn't have constitutional sheriffs, he's going to have you swatted and live stream it. I mean, this is, as online and trollish and groyperish a person as you could imagine. And it's not clear whether he has any real connection to Donald Trump, but he certainly says he does. Let's see if there's more about it. Well, this is a deadly serious report, says Jamie Raskin, who we do believe. He is a retired, he's talking about this Ivan here, a retired U.S. military officer has drawn up a deep state target list of public officials he considers traitors, along with our family members and staff. His hit list is a vigilante death warrant for hundreds of Americans and a clear and present danger to the survival of American democracy and freedom. Oh no, that's actually bad, and I think Raskin is actually right. Raskin called on House Speaker Mike Johnson, good luck, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, you might say the same thing, to denounce this dangerous plot and to repudiate threats of and planning for political violence from any quarter. Bipartisan opposition to vigilante violence and assassination plots is essential for American government to continue. True. By the way, I don't know whether this guy is laying low post-assassination attempt. I mean, normal politics would dictate that you would do so. It'd be interesting to know whether he has said, no, this is now the moment, or what. The list Raiklin has been circulating since January is extensive. It includes numerous Democratic and Republican elected officials, probably like Mitch McConnell, rhinos, FBI and intelligence officials, members of the House Select January 6th Committee, U.S. Capitol Police officers, and civilian employees, witnesses in Trump's 2 impeachment trials, subject of gag orders, and the January 6th Committee hearings, and journalists from publications ranging from CNN and the Washington Post to Reuters and Raw Story, all considered political enemies of Trump. Julie Farnham, a former U.S. Capitol Police employee named on the list who, as Assistant Director of Intelligence and Interagency Coordination, warned about the potential for violence in advance of the January 6th attack, said she would not be intimidated by the list. I don't know whether, I guess I'll just say she's on the list here. So, by the way, low bar for getting on the list, really, in terms of, actually doing anything. This is Capitol Police employee in charge of intelligence and interagency coordination who said, I think there's the potential for violence on January 6th. Now, Trump was saying, essentially, Trump's people, anyway, were saying, I think there's the possibility of violence on January 6th. But they're awesome for saying it, and she's terrible. And she doesn't say that she, facilitated the deployment of the officers who arrested some key individuals or anything like that. She was just literally, they were all doing their jobs, but here just literally doing their job, which just meant up to and no further than saying, hey, I think there's a potential for violence. Well, there is. There's really no indication that any of her activities did anything to tamp down on MAGA activities or rage at all. It's just an identifiable person. So, to boost the numbers on the list, I guess if you are billing yourself as a Secretary of Retribution, it's quantity, not quality, that you want on the list. I'll execute 300 people. I'll execute 500. I'll make a list for you. Oh, you're the Secretary of Retribution then. You have 500 people on your list. Anyway, any hit list is designed to impart the silence and fear of those named on it, Farnham told Raw Story. But silence is victory for those who write such lists. Conversely, speaking the truth without fear will always be the undoing of those, well, we hope, who seek to intimidate and spread hate in our world. I can never be silenced. So we have that from Julie Farnham. Anyway, in addition to Farnham, the list includes 9 current or former U.S. Capitol employees. The agency declined to comment for this story. Raw Story is not publishing the full list, given the potential risk posed to people unaware that they're on it. And I can see that. I don't know, although I would have put the reasoning differently. Don't publish the full list because idiot weirdos who support Trump and this idea of a Secretary of Retribution might take it upon themselves to carry out attacks on behalf, they would imagine, on behalf of the Trump campaign, and that's pretty dangerous, and that's the good reason not to share it. One individual on the list who spoke on condition of anonymity noted that Raiklin is associated with, you'll never guess, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. We guessed that just from his job posting. And Trump himself, and his weirdness. Trump himself has repeated on dozens of occasions calls for revenge, retribution, and retaliation. The person told Raw Story, this is another example of that broader phenomenon of revenge against political enemies that animates the former president and his entire movement, and for that reason should concern us all. The Trump campaign, guess what? Did not respond to emails requesting comment for this story. The accusations of treason and other imagined offenses leveled by Raiklin against these individuals are typically based on fanciful legal theories and outlandish factual claims, if anything at all. Just asterisk here, gotta warn you. Fanciful legal theories like, oh, that's just a gratuity, or the special counsel that's investigating me was unconstitutionally appointed and so the whole case should be thrown out, or presidents have absolute immunity from anything. I mean, those were all fanciful legal theories last week, but now they're Supreme Court decisions and federal court orders. So I don't know what to tell you. They are fanciful legal theories until somebody in a robe, or the right number of robes say either that's okay or not even the right number of robes. Like the wrong number of robes spoke on this idea of unconstitutional appointment for Jack Smith. As one Supreme Court justice said, I would have done this. Nobody else joined him. But then another federal judge said, aha, Supreme Court says XYZ. Supreme Court did not say that. But there's the order. Nonetheless, what do we do with it? So anyway, back to the story here. For example, Raiklin in a podcast suggested without evidence that the unidentified person responsible for setting pipe bombs outside the Democratic National Committee and Republican National Committee on January 6th was a subordinate surrogate of the Capitol Police Board, which oversees the Capitol Police. So that's their theory. The Capitol Police are the ones that put the bombs out there or ask someone else to put the bombs out there. Sure. And he's going to effect arrests, swattings, executions, what have you, on behalf of the Trump administration based on, I don't know, I imagined it, and so now let's kill people. But Raiklin is nothing if not self-assured that the, quote, evidence he's gathering on anti-Trump, quote, deep state plotters is real. So real, it seems, that Raiklin claims the material, fully revealed, would establish probable cause for county sheriffs across the nation to issue arrest warrants for various high-ranking officials who have, in one way or another, run afoul of Trump. But of course, I assume that the constitutional sheriffs would at least limit themselves to their jurisdiction, but you never know. They may have a legal theory that says, I have jurisdiction anywhere in the United States because I say so, something, something, gold fringe flag, let's go. Under Raiklin's objectively bizarre plan, the sympathetic sheriffs would deputize some 75,000 military veterans. Sure, veterans he claims have been pushed out of service because they refused to comply with COVID-19 vaccine mandates to carry out the arrests. How do you like that? They will raise an army of the unvaccinated. This is starting to take on zombie proportions. The army of the unvaccinated to carry out these orders. So mad are they at having been pushed out of the military service and forced to get better paying jobs elsewhere, in many cases, I assume. Though I'm sure it caused a lot of hardship, and if you don't want to leave, you don't want to leave. But you're in the Army, and you got your orders, take the vaccine. No? All right, then you're not an order follower? Good, you're out. You can go follow somebody else's orders. And now they apparently will. Okay, I don't know whether these guys know this, but that's the plan. Raiklin has gone so far as to pitch this plan to a group of far-right sheriffs who met in Las Vegas in April. And I imagine it was an enthusiastic reception. You get constitutional sheriffs together and say, what would you say if I told you it would be okay for you to go raise an army of 75,000 troops to arrest all your political enemies? Okay. We like that. All right. So, receptive audience. Public records requests filed by Raw Story with dozens of county sheriff's offices reveal that word of Rakeland's effort has reached the email inboxes of sheriffs from Wisconsin to Oklahoma. But Rakeland's effort to enlist these sheriffs appears to be foundering. I can't believe it. Well, maybe that could be. And, all right.
What the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
Sheriffs across the nation may be receiving this thing and asking. Yeah. That would be an appropriate question, don't you think? Exactly. This is like having a friend in the studio. But Rakeland's efforts appear to be foundering, and that's good news. Not one has openly signed on. That's incredible. And even some who are sympathetic to his cause publicly warn that his plan violates due process. Well, that's terrific. I'm very pleased to hear it. Yeah, that may not be who's responsible for all of this, but there you go. So I like the fact that they recognize that it would violate due process and that there is such a thing as too crazy for one segment of MAGA being too crazy for another segment of MAGA, which, if anything is ever to come out about the motives, if we ever find out anything about the motives of the shooter, and it just doesn't look like, I don't know, right now there's no path to it. If there's no social media footprint and no manifesto, I don't know how they're going to piece this together. But I just wanted to put out there as a possibility, as we're all confused about somebody who is apparently a Republican and comes from a very conservative Republican family, conservative enough that they were identified on a scale of 0 to 1 as a 0.99 likely to be Trump supporters and likely to be reached by a pro-gun message, et cetera, the Cambridge Analytica data, right? How does somebody like that go and shoot Trump? Two, initial paths to go down. One, it has nothing to do with anything. The person who did this is mentally ill, and you might be able to, had he lived, been able to reconstruct his pattern of thought, but it wouldn't necessarily be a rational one. Or there is something, not rational exactly, but something at work here. But we have yet to see the evidence laid out for this. But I do remind you that there are splinter groups that started as MAGA Trump supporters that have since, like we say, splintered off. Trump is too liberal or too soft on people, or we want more outright white supremacy or Nazi affiliations. Adam Waffen, Groypers, Nick Fuentes, people who have broken publicly with Trump and left him behind and, are doing their own thing. Can you be ultra-conservative and be anti-Trump because you think he isn't going far enough? There are such people. And if there's anybody going to be crazy enough to say, and I'll go on a roof, a pitched roof at that, and try and take a shot at him, I mean, being on a pitched roof is dangerous. Then it would be somebody of that bent, you would think. It's not impossible. So I want to have that out there on the record because I think eventually they'll probably come up with something resembling his profile and motivation, and you may find that is where he lands. And it's important now, in light of the thing I mentioned to Joan the other day, that there are apparently rumors circulating, and I don't know how strongly they can be backed up, of J.D. Vance having some association with Groypers in particular, who are of this bent and who have gone around the bend even on Donald Trump, some of whom still, have some residual support, but some who have clearly broken with him. And I did see a lot of wry comments out there, and I think we mentioned this yesterday, that J.D. Vance makes a great pick because no one's going to want to assassinate Trump now because J.D. Vance would become president and he's even more dangerous than Trump. Well, that is, of course, it's a supposition and a fake threat, of course. But to the extent that it works on anybody, it only works on what would presumably be a quote-unquote leftist would-be assassin. If there are such people, they might be swayed by that. But who would not be swayed by that? People who like J.D. Vance better than they like Donald Trump. and are crazy and love guns and might be motivated to take a shot. And there is, in fact, a sector of society that fits that description, and they're actually organizing online, and J.D. Vance is hanging out with them. So maybe not such a great vice presidential pick in terms of protection, if that was ever a motivation, which I'm sure it was not. But just a thought. In case anybody else gets shot, in case the same person gets shot again, without another shooting, they just come up with more information about this guy's habits and affiliations, and we end up having trouble understanding how somebody so conservative could dislike Trump so much. There is a point on the map where those guys congregate. Okay. Now back to this idiot who might also be a little too crazy for Trump. Undaunted by the fact that no constitutional sheriffs have signed up, which is astonishing, Raiklin has attempted to build relationships with conservative members of Congress. If you can't find a crazy enough sheriff, you can always head to Washington and look for a member of the Freedom Caucus. Conservative members of Congress and aides to two Republican lawmakers who chair influential House committees confirmed to Raw Story that they are familiar with him. Not very many people even know who this guy is. Being familiar with him doesn't necessarily mean they're on board with him either. An overriding reason for why Raiklin hasn't been entirely marginalized or relegated by fellow conservatives to the realm of kooks and gadflies, Raiklin uses a kind of hyperbolic language that Trump himself uses, and that Trump's base eats up. So they're open to it. I'm just saying there's a chance that he's got a foot in the door. Yes, he gives federal agencies and media outlets Trump-like nicknames like the FB Lie or Faux-Litico and National Poison Radio. Very Flynn-ish as well. But yeah, Trump uses a lot of these nicknames, but I haven't heard him use any of these. But this is more like QAnon sector stuff than anything else. My nickname is the Deep State Marauder, a.k.a. the Mauler. Raiklin fantasized about himself out loud, apparently, to a group of election deniers in New Jersey earlier this year. Yeah, my nickname is strongest guy in the world. That's my nickname. That's what they call me. And the Punisher and the Deep State Killer. Yeah, those are my nicknames. By the way, Ivan Raiklin, shorter than saying Deep State Marauder, a.k.a. the Mauler. So not even much of a nickname. But I like more fantasization here. And I like using ice picks instead of poking the bear, which is not a euphemism for, self-abuse in any way. We know this, but I'm just reminding people who, constitutional sheriffs and election deniers might think poking the bear, what kind of pornographic thing are you talking about? Oh, it's an idiom, anyway, they might know about it. How do you like that? I like using ice picks instead of poking the bear. I'm stealthy killer. Rawr. This is the worst garbage. This guy belongs in a mental institution. In a video posted in May to Twitter, which has now accrued more than 10 million views, Raiklin said, "Expect to see live-streamed swatting raids of every single individual on that deep state target list because the precedence, he says, has already been set." Of course, he means that the precedent has already been set, not that the precedents. So he's dumb on top of all of the rest of it, illiterate, but some fantasy. Every single one of the people on this list, not only are they going to be arrested, they're going to be live streamed swatted, which is a terroristic threat, and you ought to arrest him, quite honestly. Notwithstanding Raiklin's claim that his plan would be legal, moral, and ethical, well, lots of people think the jails are full of people who think that they acted legally, morally, and ethically, or at least are not guilty. Notwithstanding the claim that it would be legal, moral, and ethical, swatting, which is the false reporting of an emergency to garner a response from law enforcement for the purpose of harassing a target, it is illegal. That may or may not be what he has in mind in terms of what swatting means to him, but, he's an idiot, so I don't know if it matters a whole lot. what his definitions are. Raiklin has nevertheless promoted the idea in podcast interviews, multiple posts on Twitter, a press conference, and conversations with prominent far-right extremists. In recent days, Raiklin's rhetoric has escalated beyond setting out future hypothetical scenarios for retribution. He mocked one former federal employee who's blocking him on Twitter while suggesting that the targeted individual, quote, wants me to speak to him in person, unquote, I doubt it, and asking him for his preferred punishment for committing treason. As opposed to saying, well, no, there's a certain punishment that's dictated and we have to do it. No, you tell me what's preferred, because I love the Constitution or whatever. And during a podcast, he claimed to be surveilling a U.S. Capitol Police employee, whom he mentioned by name, both physically and digitally. Experts worry that provocative rhetoric from figures like Raiklin could impose a climate of fear on civil servants simply trying to do their jobs. Even worse, Raiklin's rhetoric could inspire violence against them. All right, time for me to start making my exit here, although it turns out there's a lot more to this article than I thought, which is terrible. The idea that you would target someone that was there on the basis of allegiance to the rule of law and the Constitution is really scary. Max Stier, president and CEO of Partnership for Public Service, told Raw Story. Stier's, I don't know, organization promotes professional merit-based civil service as a pillar of good governance, a notion that he said is being increasingly challenged. This represents, in my view, an attack on our democracy. We have a rule of law. If any civil servants are violating the law, there are mechanisms in place to hold them accountable. Vigilantism is not the way to have a society function. So this goes on at some length. We may have to continue to discuss this, but you get the idea. This guy, I don't know. I'm not certain how connected he is in reality, or to reality for that matter, but not necessarily connected in reality to the Trump campaign. They may, as soon as they can, disavow him. I don't know. But interesting. And a name to enter on the list just in case he flips out, goes crazy, and I don't know, something happens. Then we'll know who he is. All right, time now, as I said, to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy right here on Netroots Radio following this program. He's got some stories for you. He's organized. He knows what he's doing. For instance, his first story on the list, Trump had an unhinged meltdown over the stock market records and Biden's plan to reform the Supreme Court. Yes, we'll need to talk about that.
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning.
Well, that's your fault.
David Waldman.
Okay, once again, let's see what's up next on his list here. Washington State man who's been arrested and charged for attacks in 2022 that were part of a national series of disruptions to the electrical grid by far-right extremist groups. Yes, let's not leave that off the map. Let's find out more about that and other stories from around the country and around the world next.